Hey, friends, welcome to episode 284 of Better Than Before Breast Cancer with the Breast Cancer Recovery Coach. I'm your host, Laura Lummer. I am so excited to bring you today's episode because for the month of October, as I think I said on the last podcast, and as I've said on lots of social media posts, I really feel like we as survivors need to have inspiration. We don't want to get sucked into a lot of the sadness and triggers that can come along with Breast Cancer Awareness Month. There's a lot of great stuff happening out there, and I don't mean to sound like I'm bad mouthing Breast Cancer Awareness Month. That's not it at all. But I know our experience is different. And so, for that reason, I want to bring on as much inspiration as I can. And today I'm going to share an interview with a guest, Jen Delvaux, who I think you're going to love. So, let me tell you a little bit about Jen. I'm very excited. In fact, I was a guest on her podcast, which you could go and listen to, and I'll put links into the show notes. And we talked about how to find joy, how to have fun, how to do the inner work that's so much more important than just diet and nutrition. That Jen brings really special experience to the table because she's not only a breast cancer survivor, but her husband is a brain cancer survivor. So they together do a podcast episode. Jen has her podcast episode. And I love that because I know, and we all know, how much of an impact cancer has on a relationship. And when it comes to breast cancer and all the changes we go through, which can include, doesn't always, but can include the loss of or change of our breasts, menopause, change, the drugs that can bring on changes in libido, and just the overall body image that we have to deal with. And that in and of itself is a lot. Then we add onto it the desire to be understood, right? The desire to be heard and understood. And then also the stories and the thoughts we have about how we should keep showing up for our partners, for our family, even when we're going through a really tough time. So I want to share Jen's story because she's been there. And I think her perspective, which is one of real honesty, but also doing the work of finding the support that she needed, doing the work and having the conversations with her husband to develop the relationship they wanted and that they are living now. And I just think it's a great story. And so let me tell you a little bit more about her. She's the host of the wildly successful podcast, Not Today Cancer. She's the author of Not Today Cancer, a non-typical guide for the girl who wants to thrive, not just survive. So Jen Delvaux, she's an integrative health practitioner, a proud mother of two amazing adult children, and a wife to Darren, her incredible husband, who was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2009. So, through Jen's podcast, she inspires others to live their best life. But her true mission is to empower women to navigate cancer, to take control of their diagnosis, and to thrive after it. Such important work. And as a cancer thriver herself, just like her husband Darren, she's here to tell you that she knows firsthand what it takes to overcome the disease. She was diagnosed in 2021. And together, Darren and Jen speak very candidly about their struggles, and they share how they've been able to stay positive and move forward. She firmly believes that she's here on this earth to be a beacon of hope for other women, helping them release their fears and reset and rise after a cancer diagnosis. So, it's a lot of great stuff. And I know you're going to love Jen. And I'm going to put the links to her book, to her podcast, to her social media links, to all the places you can find her. She's a beautiful, inspiring person. And I hope you enjoy and find some inspiration in this episode. And here we go. Meet Jen. Hi, Jen. Welcome to Better Than Before Breast Cancer Podcast. How you doing?
Good. I'm so excited to be here today.
I'm excited to have you here today. And this podcast will come out at the beginning of October, which for us is not the same as it ever was before, right? Watching football games with pink tennis shoes and pink ribbons. And I think it's so important that people like us who have actually been through this experience connect with others, especially in this month, to give them inspiration and support, to let them borrow hope, to help them come up with some solutions. Because tell me, after I mean, your experience with your husband, your experience with yourself, that when that month came around and you see a lot of stories that come up that are terrifying, right? And so few that actually address those of us who've been through this in the sense of support, and so many, touching things, bald heads and parades and things like that. So I'm really excited that we're doing this and putting it out, and I hope our voices reach as many people as possible. And I am really excited and honored and appreciate you sharing your experience because, relationships after cancer are hard. And
So
I
hard.
see so many clients and people that are like in my Facebook groups that say, this ruined my marriage,
Mhm.
this ruined my sex life. As we know, if you go into menopause right away from the chemo, I don't have a libido, and all of the things that come with menopause. So I would love to hear your story from
Yeah.
you, your experience. What came first? How did you manage that? How did you handle the second diagnosis of cancer with the other partner, coming into your life? And work through all that. So
Yeah.
leave the stage to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I we love to share our story. It's a long one and it's a roller coaster, a lot of ups and a lot of downs. It's been a really long journey. So it started with my husband. He was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2009. He was 36 years old.
Was it
So this
glioblastoma?
it was not. So they thought it was. Actually, they thought initially it was going to be a glioblastoma
Mhm.
and they actually gave him 18 months to live without even getting into his brain. Sometimes it's very upsetting what some doctors will say before they have the evidence or proof. So I always tell people to go slow. We don't know anything until they get in there. And but anyway,
So
so
true.
we were young and he had it ended up being a grade 2 astrocytoma, but we think it was more like a grade 3 because it came back 18 months later, a lot more aggressive. So we actually went to MD Anderson. So after his initial diagnosis, it was very strange relationship wise. It brought our family so close. And it
Mhm.
was really interesting because the things that used to bug me, husband and wife, like, why can't you just put this in the hamper or, whatever it is that's driving you crazy? I'm like, oh, yeah, none of that matters. None of it.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, he
Hmm.
wants to go
Hmm.
golfing with his friends, you go golfing with your friends. You wanna watch football on Sundays, you go watch football on Sundays. And we
Yeah.
became really close as a family, and I almost didn't wanna let him go. And luckily, he healed pretty quickly after that first surgery.
Okay.
So 18 months later, he gets the second diagnosis and or yeah, it grows, go to MD Anderson, and this was a really lengthy open awake brain surgery,
Oh,
went to a
wow.
grade 3, and, after that surgery, he had a couple mini strokes. It was really extensive, like, his journey with that whole year after that second brain surgery was me being a caretaker and him being a patient. So
Hmm.
our marriage completely changed in that moment. It's interesting, it didn't the first one, it actually brought us closer. The
Hmm.
second one, I saw so much and there was so much involved. And, he had to learn things all over again. He didn't know how to read and write and like even getting into an elevator and knowing what to do. Like he didn't know how to do anything. So I
Hmm.
basically had to teach him everything over again. He obviously didn't go back to work. So I became his caretaker.
And did you have children at the time also?
Yes, 2
Okay.
kids. So
Okay.
Drew was at that time probably 6,
Oh,
and
wow.
then Maddie was like 11 or 12.
Okay.
So yeah, it was, tough on all of us, including our marriage because a year later and honestly, I didn't know that he was even gonna survive. Really, like my mom even had like a deep conversation with me like, "He may not make it." And I'm like, "I
Hmm.
know." And so all this went happened and then he just slowly started getting better and
Hmm.
improving after that year and getting better. And I'm like, wait a minute, like he's becoming Darren again. And he's learned
Yeah.
all these things over again. And then
Hmm.
he was like, hey, you know, hey,
Yeah.
what are you doing? You want to, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Starts putting the
Yeah.
moves on me. And I'm like,
Right. How
I'm
did
just like, I'm not there. Like I was his caretaker. I
Wow.
did not have any of those feelings. And
Yeah.
the beautiful thing about Darren and I is this was a little bit harder, I think. I don't think I shared everything with him, but I knew something wasn't right. And I'm like, we're pretty open, but I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I
Mhm.
didn't know what to do there, but I knew I needed therapy. So
Ah,
that's what
good.
I did.
Mhm.
Immediately, I actually did EMDR therapy so I could like
Oh,
re-look at some things that were stuck in my head. And
awesome.
we started dating again.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so we slowly got back into it. So we did get back to this beautiful relationship. And then, I'll get into the next one when you want, but then after my diagnosis, but it takes work. It's not easy. And I think a lot of times people sadly end up in divorce and they don't put the
Mhm.
work in. And, he's my best friend and I love him to death and I want him in my life. And I knew I had to get that back in our relationship for us to stay together and have a healthy relationship.
Well, you know what? I love when you just said that you started dating again and just clicked with how after our diagnosis, there's so much resistance and suffering and frustration that comes as the desire to go back to normal. And here you are deciding, okay, there's no going back because we went from husband and wife to caretaker and patient, and that vibe is just not happening. So you really had to let go of the idea of going back and create something all new, which is what we
Yes,
do now with ourselves, right? But
exactly.
it also comes to my mind is the incredible amount stress that had to be for you. Taking care of yourself, two kids, your husband, the financial pressures, the intimate, everything. And how often we hear that when someone gets a cancer diagnosis, we can look back 2 to 4 years prior to that diagnosis and see a tremendous amount of stress, right?
Totally. Absolutely. Yep,
Yeah. So when you,
100%.
how long after that were you diagnosed?
So he had a third brain surgery in 2019 and then I was diagnosed in 2021. So
And
and
when you,
yeah, in 2019 that was another awake brain surgery in Houston, Texas. And this time I went to grade 4 glioblastoma and and here he is still a miracle. And he actually did really good after that surgery and he is a walking miracle. He is the person that is proof that stats lie and his
yeah,
attitude is everything. But
God, I
so
love
when
that.
I was diagnosed, that changed everything too in our relationship. And I almost think from my perspective, and I think it's the female perspective, it was harder. So I
Why is
think
that?
I think men are like, oh yeah, they can, you know what I'm saying? For
Yeah.
women, our breasts are supposed to be, the sexual thing. And our breasts just tried to kill us. And it's like not sexy anymore. And cancer isn't
Mhm.
sexy. And our breasts change and we may look differently and feel differently and menopause. And all of a sudden we have all the things going on. And what I did was then I could be really honest with Darren. And I was like, listen, I do not look at my breasts as a sexual thing anymore. I do not feel good in my own skin. I'm not comfortable right now. I, I, I the menopause symptoms, like I was so honest with him about everything that I was feeling,
Yeah.
which is so important because I think a lot of women were embarrassed and we don't want to say these things. But
For
Darren knew
sure.
exactly how I was feeling. He knew I wasn't engaging in it at that point because it was me and I had to go through this and learn what I could do. So there are, and the beautiful thing is there's things you can do and you can
Mhm.
overcome it. But again, you have to seek help for this. There's,
I love that.
menopause doctors out there and therapists and OBGYN, and there's so many things that you can do to help you get through menopause and have a healthy sexual life again.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you more about that, but I just think it's two things you've said are so important. One, that you realized you needed to get therapy to work through your thoughts and process. And too many people, I think, feel for some reason and think, I should be stronger. I could do this on my own. I shouldn't have to reach out. I hear people say, I don't want to air my dirty laundry. I don't want to complain. And it's so sad because it's like, this is emotional wellness. When you got
Mhm.
ill with cancer, you reached out and you got support because your body needed support. You didn't know how to treat yourself. You had cancer, right?
Mhm.
And now you have an emotional challenge, illness for lack of another word, right? That is suffering. And you don't know how to treat that because you've never been there. And it's so totally fine to get help. And then also, like you said again, I hear this all the time, oh, menopause did this to me and did that to me. And we think that we just have to live with that.
Mhm.
But just like you're saying, you can put together a team. We put together a team when our life is on the line with chemotherapy and doctors and all that. We can put together a team for recovery as well. And I think coaches and therapists and all the people you just talked about are an important part of that team. So tell me some of the
Absolutely.
things you did to help you manage. Like, how did you, one, transparency, I think is awesome that you just
Yeah.
really shared how you feel, you found your voice. And so, what kind of things did you do to help yourself feel the way you wanted to feel?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, when I got my diagnosis, I am the type of person that I am like, okay, this situation happened, whatever that is, and I could have my pity party for a minute, and then I need to pick myself up and figure out what to do. So I am a researcher at heart as well, and I started looking into, what could acupuncture do? What type of vitamins could I take? I even did energy healing, like anything to like calm myself and figure out what I could do. I also met with my OBGYN and I'm luckily fortunate enough to have a very open OBGYN who is just out there and says all the things. So she was so helpful in helping me come up with some products that might help with dryness and even lack of libido. And I also look at nutrition and exercise and
Right?
mindset. And like I do it all. I'm not the type of person that will just sit back and follow the doctor's orders and do the treatment and then that's it. I think people that don't take the initiative and do things, those are the people that are stuck. And I think those that do things, we have less fear because we feel like we have no more control.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think too, like that's such an important point that you make because there's a lot of people out there, I call them soft coaching,
Mhm.
where it's like, it's okay, honey, and we all feel bad. And I know we all go through that. And it's like, ladies, we got to be honest. It's
Mhm.
work. And
Mhm.
it takes intention and energy and time and planning and effort. And it's frustrating sometimes, right? We're like, I shouldn't have to. Well, that's a great story, but we do have to.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you really want that back in your life or something, if anything back in your life,
Mhm.
you've got to put the energy into it.
Yeah.
How old were you at your diagnosis?
I was 47.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I was 48 on my original one too. And you're
Yeah.
still so young, right?
I know. I know. So just blasted into menopause overnight and I had my whole entire life changed. And I went through all the emotions, I was mad at first. My
Mhm.
husband is interesting. He's just like this happy-go-lucky, like, "I'll be fine," and he just takes what the doctors say, and his mindset is great. It's I don't I always joke around that they tweaked something during one of his brain surgeries. And and I had work to do. I know myself. I would not feel comfortable with me just doing the bare minimum of what the doctor says because I look at like, okay, this happened to me. What was I doing? What can
Mhm.
I maybe change? Because obviously something was wrong. And I think
Right.
a lot of it is our stress.
Absolutely.
I
Well,
think
so
I think
that's what I want to ask you about.
yeah.
When you got your diagnosis, and I know you went through a lot of reflection. Tell me what you thought about like being the loved one and the caretaker for someone who was sick. How did you take care of yourself during that time? And then with reflection, how would you say you would take care of yourself differently in any kind of stressful situation?
Yeah. I mean, this was really different for me because I am the one that takes care of the family. I'm the one that honestly does it all. He is the light in our lives, but he can't work
Mhm.
and he's he can. And so a lot of it's on me. And so when I was diagnosed, I was consumed with fear. I think most of us, like, we think
Mhm.
the second you hear the words, "You have cancer," you're, like, dying in 2 weeks,
Right,
like
yeah, of course.
like, immediately. And
Yeah,
my biggest fear at that time was not being here for my kids and my family. And I was like, who's gonna who's gonna take care of everything?
yeah.
And, even me going through it, it was still a lot on me. I mean, I love my husband and he tries to do his best, but he doesn't really know how to take care of me. So again, I had to be the strong one. I had a
Mhm.
lot of support from friends, but I really think it takes community. It takes being connected
Yeah.
with other women who've gone through it. I can't imagine going through this without other women, watching other women a step ahead of me
Mhm.
to see the light, because they taught me so much. Because I
Mhm.
think a lot of it was on me.
Yeah. Who did you turn to? Like, where did you find support in that community?
Well, I listened to a couple different podcasts, of women who were going through it. That was very helpful to me. I met with an energy healer. She helped me process a lot. I had an acupuncturist. He was on my team, helped me through a lot. It was a lot of things that brought peace and calm to me. So honestly, like, the podcasts that I listened to were silly podcasts of
Mhm.
women making light of it. And it
Mhm.
made it not so scary. Like, I didn't want to, in the original diagnosis, I didn't want to know all the facts. Like, I'm a
Mhm.
researcher, but sometimes I think we have to protect our mind and
Yeah.
not maybe look at it all. And
Right.
so I focused on things that I was like, what I could do and, how I could heal, how I could help myself and really focus on that, calming myself. And so, meditation,
Mhm.
meditation
Yeah.
was huge. And
Mhm.
journaling
Yes.
was massive. Like, I immediately, the second I was diagnosed, I just started writing down my story and what was
Mhm.
happening. And I
Yeah.
had no idea. I think prior to my diagnosis, I was like, go, 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 go. Never slowed down, didn't have time for meditation. And the second I was diagnosed, my world stopped
Mhm.
and everything changed for me. And that's when I really started slowing down and like, oh my gosh, even looking around and saying, look at the beautiful flowers and the greenery. And like, you see things so differently from a different set of eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's is such an important point to make is that we just like you said with your husband, suddenly the petty things are like, it doesn't matter. I
No,
love
it doesn't
you,
matter.
you know? And so
Yeah,
often it's like really the petty things are what, 5% of a relationship? And we
totally.
just focus on that 5% instead of the 95% of everything. It's wonderful. Then the
Yeah.
more intention we put into that tiny percent of negativity, the more negative it becomes.
Yes.
And same thing, like what you're saying with research is I, for myself and
Mhm.
for the people I work with, always say, make an informed decision. Do the
Mhm.
research you need to understand the choice you're making. And then focus on people who healed. Listen to stories of people who survived. Listen to stories of
Yeah.
people who treat themselves well. But what all the things that you offered, again, I just want to keep emphasizing it's so beautiful you did that, but you had a team and
Yeah.
you didn't just put all your eggs in a standard of care basket, although you, I'm sure, like me, are grateful that was there and saved our lives,
Mhm.
but integrative care and these simple things, right? Meditation, journaling, and people poo-poo it all the time, right? And you see that? They're just like, that's just okay. Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, I tried that. It's
Mhm.
like, no, it's not a trying. It's a, you've got to do this on a regular basis. It is a therapy.
It
And
is.
we have
I
to
don't I
support
don't know
each
where
other.
I'd be without it. I really don't. Like, the journaling piece of it, and I used to think I didn't use to journal because I'm not like the best writer. Grammatically, things are off. I may misspell words, and I thought journaling had to be this beautiful writing of poetry. It's not. It's literally getting your thoughts onto paper. Even when things are driving me crazy or they are hard in my relationship, or when I'm doing all the things, sometimes it can be like frustrating. I will write it all out and then I tear that piece of paper up and throw it away. But those thoughts and those feelings have left my body. And I
Yeah.
think it's really important to get rid of any of this stuck energy.
So good, so true. And I was just going to ask you that question. I was going to say a lot of times women are afraid to be honest even with themselves on paper
Mhm.
because they're afraid people might see it. So I was going to ask you, how did you deal with that? So you threw it away, right?
Oh yeah. Listen, I've gotten a lot on paper and thrown it away. Sometimes I've burned it.
I love that. Yeah. And
Yes.
that's my tell them, like, burn it if you have to, drown it if
Yeah.
you have to, but get it
Yes.
out of you first. And
Yeah.
don't you think too that that's kind of ceremonial, right? You write it all
Totally.
out, you get it out, and then the throwing away is like, I'm done with you, right?
Yes.
I'm done with
I
this. Get it out.
I even think going back to like earlier trauma in your life, in your childhood, and just sitting there, like putting your timer on for 10 minutes. And I listen to some music in the background and I will think, like, what upset me as a child? And I might think one little thing that happened and I will journal about it. And it feels so good getting it off your chest. Because
And then
back
isn't
then we
it
never did that.
amazing? Yeah, how much emotion will come up when you do that.
Yes,
Some
it's
of the
amazing.
simplest, silliest things as a kid, and you just feel the sadness come up, and you think, where's
Yes,
that been? It's just
right.
been there, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you think about now, you did all this stuff to heal and take
Yeah,
care of yourself. When, I mean, I'm not going to say when you go through a stressful situation, life every day is stressful. You're still
right.
managing a family and you've got to take care of yourself and keep your stress reduced. You've got a
Mhm,
business, you guys have a podcast, you've got a family. So how is the way you take care of yourself and your relationship with your husband different now than it
mhm.
was before cancer? What have you learned about that?
Oh, yeah, great question. Uh, Honestly, it's slowed down. So we
Okay.
appreciate the small moments. Darren and I, we talk. We talk about things. I almost look at it as a gift that most relationships or marriages never have. And we've
Mm,
had the scary conversations, about death. Like Darren and I have had gut wrenching, beautiful conversations about like death and what that means. And honestly, it makes it less scary, but we're just so open with each other. And when I noticed too is I'm much slower. I feel like my brain is way less cluttered because I just
mhm,
move at a different pace. I when I notice that I'm like, getting into that old space where I'm trying to do it all and I'm feeling stressed and I can't even think straight, I will go sit down and do a meditation or I'll
mhm.
go sit in my sauna and just let the sweat come out and just like feel it all. It's so important to slow down
Yeah,
because I do believe stress is like one of those things. Like, I'm not kidding you. So many women that I've interviewed, 9 times out of 10, it is a major stress before their diagnosis. Is that same case for you?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, a great part of what I do, I mean, that's what we do as a life coach is help people look at their thoughts. You
Mhm.
know, I don't care how good you eat. If you're a hot mess in between your ears, you are going to get sick again. Like life
Yeah.
is not going to get easier. And the clearing the clutter is something, again, it's, I think people overcomplicate the healing process, right?
Yeah.
We want all the supplements and all the treatments and all the things and all the newest. And it's like, if you would just come back to whole foods,
Mhm.
slow down your life,
Mhm.
learn how to establish healthy boundaries. And those three things just in themselves could take you a lifetime to get good
Totally.
at,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, just come back to these very simple things, which are acts of self-love for you and your
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
Like your family's going to be happier. You're not running around like crazy town and chaos every
Yeah.
day, right? Yeah, you say
Yeah.
no to, yeah, you say
It's
no to
it's
things for your own health.
oh my gosh, I say no to so many things. I used to be a people pleaser. I am not anymore. And the other really interesting thing is when you just slow down and you quiet your mind, you feel things like I literally feel the energy in my body. Like I can feel it going moving through my feet. And I never felt that before. For my entire
Awesome.
life.
Isn't
It's
that
like,
awesome?
and you have to like have the trust in your body and love on your body. I think I saw you even say something before. You have to, I saw it somewhere, whether it was a podcast or on your website, maybe, but just loving your body, even though you had that cancer diagnosis.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that, I flipped a big switch between my first diagnosis and my second
Hmm.
from being in the pink fight.
Hmm.
And the book Radical Remission is the one that changed my
Me
perspective.
too. That's
Is
my
it?
favorite book.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
I've read
But
it
as
like
you're
three
saying,
times.
Yeah, as you're saying, like, feel the energy, I think of that Japanese gentleman that they talked about, and he sat on his rooftop and said how he started noticing energy
Yes.
moving in him for the first time, and I
Yes.
love him. Like, if I could meet anyone in the world, I would like to meet him, even though he doesn't speak English. I was like,
I
"You're the
know
coolest
when he
guy."
was up in like he in the hospital room, like dying, found that place outside. Amazing. Like
Amazing.
amazing. Chills.
And yeah, such a big lesson, right? So it's just that when I realize it's like when we talk about cancer, like can't screw cancer and that, and let's just be honest, it sucks. It's hard, it's difficult, it's scary, but it's our body. It's our
Yeah.
own body cells, which is why it's so hard. And I try
Mhm.
to think of it like in kind of metaphoric terms, right? And it's like, wait, these cells are disconnected. They're no
Mhm.
longer part of the community. They're not functioning together. They're not connected to each other. And I think about that in terms of me. Where am I disconnected? How am I not part of my community? Where am I
Oh.
keeping myself separate? And I try to think about these six cells are in me. What are their attributes? What are they doing? And how do I love them?
Mhm.
And I think he was the one that said it in that book, Radical
Mhm.
Mission. I sent love to my cancer. And that was like, what?
Yes.
Because my first thought was, if you send love to it, it's going to grow. So you'd be like, I
Right.
love you, cancer.
Yes.
And then you think about, will you send love to your sick kid, your sick husband, your sick self, right? And it's like, we send the energy for them to heal, not to grow.
Totally.
And that was everything. So everything you say and how you were all those things you did to construct that team and love yourself is that connecting to this everything in my body. Hey, I want you to heal. I don't want you to turn into cancer cells again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
cool.
It is
Yeah.
so it's powerful and
Mhm.
it gives somebody it should make somebody feel better about it and gives them a sense of control and peace.
Mhm. Yeah, and like you said, when you step in and you take care of your nutrition and you take care
Yeah.
of your meditation and you
Mhm.
assemble your team, there's no more there's not all the room for fear. Fear will still be
Mm-mm.
there, right?
Mhm.
It's a natural part of this process, but it's not you sitting here powerless wondering when is this going to happen to me? What is going to happen to me? What's coming that I don't see coming?
Yeah.
And if we can get that ingrained into our people, right? It's like you have so much power. And I think instead we go to what we've been conditioned to from kids, right? Let me make you feel better with this treat. Let me make you
Mhm.
feel better with this cocktail. Let me make you feel better because you don't feel good, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
then we kid ourselves into saying we're treating ourselves with things that are harming us
Mhm.
even more. And then that takes away more power because we feel like shit.
It really does. We were on vacation recently and my son said, "Mom, just splurge, like have these fries." I said, "You know what? If I wanted to have the fries, I would. I
Yes.
don't want them." And the
Yes.
interesting part is like once you start becoming healthy and you eat these amazing nutritious foods, the foods that used to look at as a treat, they're just not anymore.
Yeah. So true. And it takes a
Yeah,
while to get there. It takes,
totally.
to change it and then I think you kind of go through the fighting to not have any of it and
Yeah.
then the moderation of a little bit and then you know what? I just surrender. I just don't even want that in me anymore,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yep,
you finally find peace. Yeah.
yep.
I
Baby
I was in
steps.
Napa with some friends over the weekend and it was that kind of thing where I was still stuck to my diet routine and just saw so many carbohydrates everywhere on the table and stuff and I thought I'm good with it.
Yeah,
It's cool. I'm happy for them to have it all,
yeah,
but yeah, I just don't care.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's
It's
a good
interesting
place
how
to
you
get to.
change. Yes, it
Mhm.
is. It's very
Yeah.
freeing.
Yeah. What would you say to people? So one was your journaling, and I
Mhm,
know women have fear about putting their thoughts out on paper.
mhm.
And then the second one is how did you find your voice to be so transparent with your husband? Because I know that holds a lot of women back, the fear that I'll reveal myself and put myself in this vulnerable position and he won't accept it, defend it, reject it. Something will happen that
Mhm,
I won't feel received in the way I want to feel received. So then they hold it in.
mhm. I think it came very natural to me. It wasn't hard to find my voice. I knew it had to have be a conversation, and I think with Darren, we've always been open with each other,
Yeah.
and so I think we've had that advantage, and I think also with him having cancer, he understood,
So
you
what would you
know?
say to someone who feels like that they want to, but they are scared? How do they get to that place? What do you think they
I
need to do?
mean,
How can they support themselves?
Yeah, you basically just have to. You have to
Mhm.
have that conversation because, there's a lot of things in life that we don't wanna do. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, we're not always motivated to exercise and, but if you don't, you know, but so I would just say that you have to do it for your marriage, for
Yeah.
your relationship, and it's a disservice to him not to tell him because he doesn't understand what you're thinking. And the second you have that conversation, he's going to say, "Oh, I get it. Okay, like how do we move past this? Like there's things you can do." But it's just making yourself have that conversation.
Mhm.
It's uncomfortable. Maybe get in a situation where you guys are having dinner together or, it's a date night and you're just it's just a conversation that's you cannot ignore. Because that if you
Yeah.
ignore that, that can affect your marriage.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And then what would you say when to you do that and you get a response you don't want? Like you're hoping for a different response, but you don't get it. Then what?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm just so lucky. Like I knew that he would understand and appreciate it, but
Yeah.
gosh, I think you'd have to go to therapy. I think
Yeah.
both of you together, he would have to get it too. Like maybe even have separate conversations, but he needs to understand the world that you've just entered. And I think they don't. If
Yeah.
they have not gone through a diagnosis, it's really hard to understand what's going through a woman's mind. So yeah, I think for sure, hands down, you would need to seek therapy for sure.
Yeah.
Talk
Well,
to
I love
somebody.
that. And I hope that people start to adopt that mentality. If it's like, I think people think of therapy with this old school mentality of, I'm not crazy, I don't need therapy. Or if we go to therapy, it's just to prove I'm right before we get divorced, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's so not about that, right? It's about learning
No.
tools to communicate.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
so important.
So
Yeah,
important. I mean, Darren and I look at therapy as like I mean, it's been part of our marriage for a long time. So I think we've just always had that in us. I think people who don't get therapy, like every single one of us needs therapy at some point in our life, if not forever, an ongoing thing. And we just had to get through some tough stuff, because I have a lot on me and we went through some things where he was almost preparing me for his own mortality, like death, like
mhm,
even like, here's who I think you should marry. And I was like, this is too much. Like, cause I'm sitting here now in this waiting game. It was very strange. So
mhm.
we had to go to therapy over it. And
Okay,
he now understood, like, okay, that was probably taking it too far. And so therapy it helped us get through all of that.
awesome. Yeah,
Yes.
so good. That's just such a great tool because how do we can't get through what we don't know how to get through, right?
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
No.
And I think also this mistaken mentality or expectation that things should be easy. And it's
Right.
like, why do we ever think things should be easy? When have things ever been easy?
Right.
Right? They
No,
always
right.
take
No.
effort and attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we live the easy life, what does that mean? Sit back, don't exercise, eat whatever you want, fight with people, say whatever's on your mind with no filters,
Right.
That's
It's not fun.
well, yeah, yeah. It takes a lot of work.
Yes.
That's awesome. So what would you say, like, what would be your best advice? Someone came to you and said, here I am, I just got diagnosed. I don't know. I'm so afraid of what this is going to do to my marriage, or even after the fact of saying I'm, having all these menopausal symptoms and
Mhm.
it's affecting me and I'm unhappy and he's unhappy. Where do
Mhm.
we go from here?
Well, I think number 1, you need to start taking care of you.
Hmm.
Put yourself first, and that is exactly all the different pillars that we've already discussed. I
Yeah.
I think it's connecting with a community, having that support, talking to somebody else who's been through it, who gets it, who's
Yeah.
getting through it in a positive way. I mean, there's some people who maybe are not the best to follow, but somebody who is getting through it in a positive way. Meditation. I mean, by you working on you, it's going to make you feel better, which then makes your relationship better, makes everything in your
Mhm.
life better when you're taking care of yourself by looking at, and don't get overwhelmed by it. I know a lot of people get this diagnosis and they're at square one with their health and they've never exercised, they didn't eat healthy, they didn't do any of these extra things. It's just taking one thing at a time. And I think One thing that was super powerful for me was meditation and calming down my brain. And just by
Mhm.
doing that, you're going to feel better. And then maybe it's starting to get outside and just walking
Yeah.
and looking at nature. And then it's looking at your diet and maybe looking at things that maybe you can add instead of always
Mhm.
taking away right away. You know, like adding
Yeah.
more fruits and vegetables into your diet and just looking at how you can de-stress. But by taking care of yourself, that's going to then take care of your relationship.
Yeah, and so true. And I think
Mhm.
we too often think we'll have to fix that other person or make them do what I think they should be doing. And we completely overlook the work and care for ourselves,
Yes.
right? And that's such an important starting point. Even in having those tough conversations, like you were saying, the worst thing that can happen is you're going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
That's it. But if you don't have it, you're never going to know what's on the other side.
I know.
And maybe you get what you want on the other side, and maybe you won't.
Mhm.
But in the process, you'll learn to take care of yourself, whatever the outcome might be. Right?
Absolutely. It takes time. It takes time. When you start something new, you are not going to, just like, let's just take exercise, for example. If you have never worked out and you start exercising, you're not going to want to do it
Hmm.
every day for the next 30 days. You're not going to want to do it. And exercise isn't for 21 days or 30 days or 90 days, it's for the rest of your life.
Hmm.
And you have to fight through that when you don't want to do it because then it eventually becomes just ingrained into your life, living
Yeah.
that healthier lifestyle. But it doesn't come easy, it takes
Yeah.
work.
So basically, our message to everybody is work harder.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Yeah. They're all like, it's hard. I'm like, I know it is hard. Right?
Yes.
But it's hard, but in a good way, right? Like putting
Right.
your effort into the relationship. Now you're sitting here going, God, we dated again. We created a whole new
Yes.
relationship. How cool is that?
So
Like,
cool.
that's so neat. Like, just say everything off the table. We got to figure this out and start fresh.
And
And I
everything
love
changed
that.
for us and it was for the best. It was tough. That whole year was hard
Hmm.
and then it was just the best it had ever been.
Hmm. I love that. That's so
Mhm.
cool. So, if people want to hear more about you, you have an awesome podcast. Tell us about that. Tell us where to find you. Share
Yes.
everything. Mhm.
I have a podcast show, Not Today Cancer, and I'm interviewing people. And in fact, I will have you on my show.
Uh-huh.
And then I also have an episode that my husband and I, Darren and I, do together on Fridays. It's lighter. He's hysterical. He's funny. And then I will do a breast cancer 101, which is brief, just a brief topic about breast cancer and how you get through it. I also have a community of incredible women supporting each other with tools to talk about a lot of the things, or that we talk about a lot of the things we discussed. We've got live calls in there. I have a book, Not Today Cancer. An Instagram account is under my name, Jen Delvaux. I kind of do it all.
Well, and I'll put the links to everything in the show notes for this
Yeah.
episode too. But I just really want to encourage people, listen, like especially if you're struggling in that relationship, listen to you and your husband and understand, because I think hearing a man's perspective, right? We borrow hope from each other as survivors, as a women.
Yeah.
Men have a totally different perspective and think in a different way, and we can't expect them to think like women because they're not, right?
Right.
So hearing, I think, the perspective of a man who has supported someone who's
Mhm.
gone through it, I think is such a cool resource to have.
Yeah.
So use it, right?
He's
Listen.
great.
Yeah,
He's great.
I love that. Right. Well, thank you so much, Jen. I could talk
Thank
to you
you.
forever. So
Yes. Thank you
we
for
have to get
having
back to
me.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
of course.
so
Thank you
fun.
so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank
Take
you.
care. All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview. And, for me, the big takeaway from there was when you care for yourself and you put yourself first, which comes out to sound so selfish to some people, right? That's the first place our minds go to is selfishness. But I hope you learned from Jen that it was only in putting her needs first and putting herself first that she was able to heal from all the things. And she was able to figure out what her needs were, and by doing that, she was able to have a richer and happier relationship. I think that that is a message that cannot be stated enough. And that whatever thoughts you are working through that bring up stories that say to you, that's selfish. I don't deserve that. My money should go somewhere else first. Therapy's expensive. That I hope you find someone, that there's some champion in your life you can go to help you work through those thoughts and help you understand that to live the life you want to live a life that's better than before breast cancer, better than before brain cancer, better than before cancer hits our lives at all. We've got to do the work to change the things that brought us to the place where we didn't take the best care of ourselves, so that we can step into that future version of us who's madly and radically in love with ourselves, compassionate with ourselves. And in doing so, we show up so much better for everyone else that we love in this life. All right. So follow Jen. All her links are in the show notes for this podcast, breastcancerrecoverycoach.com/284, or scroll down where you're listening to this podcast and you'll see all the links right there too. I know you'll love adding Not Today Cancer to your inspiring repertoire of podcasts. I'll talk to you soon.